I'm just really thrilled to have you sit through this again.
Well, we want to do it
Thank
because
you.
for those that haven't been here, as you know, our policy in full committee, no testimony in full committee. So members of the committee can ask questions. So go ahead.
Thank you. I bring for your consideration House Bill 354, and what this does is it aligns definitions with industry standards, and it also provides the Department of Early Care and Learning the ability to administer any programs that are put under their care. So if you look at line 16, it amends daycare center language with the new term child care learning center. Line 38 clarifies that the department has the authority to regulate all early care and education programs regardless of whether or not education curriculum is provided. And line 44 changes the age of a child to be in care from 18 to 13 years old. And line 46 is important in the fact that it provides for the safety of children under the care of family daycare homes. It provides that only 6 children can be in these homes. Line 68, again, talks about child care.
Madam Chair, if I could, you're talking about, is that 6 paid? Now, they can also have some of their...
Yes, 6 paid or unpaid.
Or unpaid, 6 total. Okay, good.
It changes the loophole so that it will be to the safety of our children.
Gotcha, good.
Turn to Section 3, line 87. It talks about liability insurance coverage, and parents need to be notified if there is no liability coverage. And this is basically cleanup language, and it's a transfer from another section of the bill. Line 98, this section grants the Department of Early Care and Learning the ability again to administer any program transferred or designated by the governor to be under their care. 4 and 5 again changes definitions. In Section 6 has to do with issues regarding the administration of federal programs or federal grants, and they shall be preceded by notice and an opportunity for a hearing if there is a contested case. Line 7 just adds the word commissioned, and so it reads that these care centers are licensed, commissioned, or registered. And Section 8, it talks about child care councils that one member shall be present from a child care learning center. And this is where we lost the 8 pages. And we'll go on to Section 9. Again, this is a definition. Section 10 talks about, again, that moves the liability insurance to another section. 11 is no new language. 12 talks about the places where the definition has changed, and that concludes the bill.
Would you please, to clarify, because we have 2 or 3 new members that weren't in the subcommittee, when you say we lost some pages, tell them what we did.
We had the Professional Standards Commission was involved with this, and they were going to administer consequences and have a great scope in terms of what they could do with these early child care centers. That will be, Representative Coleman, Mr. Chair, that will be with another bill, is my understanding. So to not confuse things, we've taken an 18-page bill and kept it with the Department of Early Care and Learning.
All right, do I have any questions from any members of the committee? I see 18. All right, who is that? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Clark, had 2 questions. One was on line 46 through 48. I understand we're lowering it to 13 years. That's really who we're talking, 6 people, 13 years of age. But the language here, although the existing law says it considers family daycare homes and regulates those that are doing it for pay, line 47 says, and not for pay. So I'm concerned that it's increasing the scope to not for pay circumstances, and I wanted to understand why that ad is in there.
Sir, that closes a loophole, and I will let Mr. Higgins talk to that because there have been some issues throughout the state.
That is correct. We are trying to close what we see as a potential loophole for a child safety reason. The way it's written now is, as you stated, it's up to 6 for pay. But with a signed parent affidavit, you can have additional children not for pay. And we recognize that there are legitimate circumstances out there where that occurs. But we also feel like there are several cases where it may not be quite as legitimate, and we have a concern from a child safety standpoint. So we're trying to close that loophole by saying basically it would be 6 children, whether or not for pay at one particular time. But in trying to be sensitive to some of the things that you've talked about, we've tried to make some other changes to provide more flexibility, also make it more implementation or small business friendly by lowering the age from 18 to 13, with the thought being that the older children, in the event of an emergency or something, may be able to fend for themselves, as well as make it more flexible in implementation. And then we've put the unrelated language. So our goal is not to extend our regulations or overreach at all. We, as you stated, we currently regulate family daycare homes. We just want to try to address this potential loophole so as to not have too many kids in the same residence for safety reasons.
Under current law, family daycare homes constitute what is the number of kids that have to be there to be regulated by your agency?
Sure. A family daycare home is at least 3 and no more than 6 for pay. And then if you go to between 7 and 18, it's a group daycare home. Mm-hmm. And then 19 and over is a child care learning center.
Okay,
so if there was a family that had 5 kids and they taken, you know, or 4 kids, and that mom, along with watching 4 kids, has a mother across the street who's a working mom, a single mom who puts a kid in her home for pay. You know, maybe mom's got 4 kids between the ages of 4 and 12, and there's a 6-year-old that lives across the street, and single mom's going to pay someone to watch their child, whereas traditionally one paying child does not constitute a regulated entity by your department. Now, because there's 4 unpaid kids and 1 paid kid in the home, now you have a regulated entity by virtue of she has her own 4 kids and 1 paying child.
Sure. Let me do this. Let me refer to our chief legal officer on one part, but if that's okay, Mr. Chairman. But before I do that, I definitely want to say it's our intention and our understanding in the way the bill is drafted is to try to not affect that situation in the way that we've tried to draft it, that basically the mother of 4 that has the 4 kids, those 4 wouldn't be in the count. So we definitely are sensitive to what you're bringing up. But let me ask Ira to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Mr. Higgins brought up.
Please go to the mic over there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Higgins basically hit the nail on the head. The point that this statute is trying to do is saying that the children of the that are related to the caregiver are not counted. So if you look at line 46 through 47, it talks about the provided, however, that the total number of unrelated children for care, for pay, or for not pay may not exceed that 6. So we're not going to count those 4 that you brought in. So if it's just that one child from across the street, that family would not be under our purview.
I guess my concern is just trying to keep my eye on the ball of the regulatory scope here. And I know typically you would think about uncompensated kids being a family member typically, although that may not always be the case. It seems to line up to me as if you've got 3 paying kids, then they fall under your regulatory purview now. So it would seem to me to maintain consistency on that front, if you've got 3 or more paying kids and they fall under your purview, maybe you limit the total kids in the home to 6. But as I read this, you could have a mix and match circumstance with only 1 paying kid, but still fall under or 2 paying kids and still fall under the scope, as I'm reading it.
Well, if they're related, we wouldn't count them. So if it's a neighbor's kids and they're over 2, then we would be under our purview. But the way that the law currently exists is that you have centers or family daycare homes that are saying that the children, they just sign these no compensation forms. And what our fear is, another concern, is that a lot of these parents are signing them not knowing the consequences, just making the statement to the state that they're not compensated, but they are paying the provider and then filing things like a tax credit for compensation for paying for child care. So this type of provision gets rid of those issues that the state believes is happening.
What you're saying here, though, along with what he's saying, unrelated, where it says on line 46, the total number of unrelated children cared for in such a home for pay and not for pay may not exceed 6. So if that parent has 5 children, they're all related. Well, the way I read this, she could have 6 more, 7 more paid. So she could have a total of, is that right?
That's correct, Chairman.
11.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
So see, it's fine. We're not, in other words, if it's not taking care of her children, we're not counting those. Unrelated. But if she brought in several neighbor kids, say they're free, they still count in that over.
That's correct, and we also try to be family friendly, and by rules go to a degree of sanguinity of up
You're
to.
not penalizing her for doing her own, but you're saying she can go 6 above what she has.
That's correct. We're trying to be as
6
family
above
friendly.
what she has.
Absolutely.
If she has 12 children, she can go up to 18 as long as she's got. And I feel sorry for her if she can handle 18. That's right.
And I just asked the question because you've got circumstances when you've got families that live in proximity. You've got a mom that looks after her kids, her sister's kids for no pay, and then you might have. I just want to think this through, and I hate to do it on the fly, but it's an important subject matter.
Absolutely, if I may say for that, we do go through a degree of sanguinity. It's not just your biological children. We go far as the 3rd degree of sanguinity.
All right, I think we've cleared it, okay? Number 20, Representative Cassis.
Thank you. Representative Clark, or anyone that can answer this question, when does an early care education program begin? How do you know there's something going on that's considered an early care and education program? Is there a certain time that the kids spend in the house?
Ira, would you like to address that as far as definitions, please? If that's all right, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Are you speaking directly towards a family daycare home or any of the different facilities as Mr. Higgins was speaking to earlier?
Well, I'm seeing that we're messing around here with a lot of definitions, and right now in lines 38 through 40, an early care education program can be something that's happening that may not include education. If I've got 25 kids in my house for my child's birthday party, is it going to be considered an early care program?
It would not.
Why?
That would not come under our purview. It deals with for 6 children for pay, for 2 children for pay is what starts off the first one as a family daycare. So if you're bringing in 25 children for a birthday party, you wouldn't bring in that for pay area. So they would just.
But on line 47 it says not for pay.
For pay and not for pay.
Right. But it goes into also the regulatory section. We have exempt programs under our statute. There's plenty of exempt sections. We have
So there is another section.
under our regulatory area where we do not want to extend into the area, such as Mother's Morning Out program, or if you're in a gym that has a child care facility, short-term care. All those areas are actually exempt from our regulatory.
And I know my example of a birthday is rather ridiculous, but I guess my point that I'm trying to get to is actually home study. And, you know, when is there any place, even with a home study program, let's say moms get together and they have all these kids in the house and they're doing whatever, they're doing a project, a science project or whatever. Is it going to be labeled an early care program?
No, if the parents are actually there with them, that it wouldn't be under our purview anyway.
How do you?
And they're doing
how
it
do you know?
periodically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other question?
Any
other question?
Okay.
All right, I have 22. Did you 21? Did you have a question? All right, 22. All right, 26.
Appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion.
All right, I have no more questions. So, all right, no more questions or comments. So I will accept your motion, Mr.
I move to pass, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I have a motion to pass. Do I have a second? I have a second. Any more discussion? All in 18? All right, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to follow up on, and this is all helpful to your intent here. Representative Cassis asked the question, we've got homeschool co-ops out there where you've got kids, ages from 0 to 15. There's, as you know, it's sort of an age-blended circumstance. if you've got a mom in a home that's watching kids, I guess rather than me thinking of a hypothetical, maybe the answer is students who are participating in a home study program shall be participating in this. I mean, because you could, I mean, I can imagine.
Ask your question, please, because we're going ahead and we've already got a motion. This is just other questions.
I'm just asking the author and perhaps the department and maybe the vice chair. Is there would there be value in having? I tell you what, Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to offer an amendment.
No, go ahead and ask.
There may be something we can offer in the Senate. I'm concerned that maybe to Vice Chairman Cassis's question, you could have home study kids factoring into these numbers in ways that are unintended and kind of chaotic.
One more comment from you.
I was just going to say, if it pleases the chair, we'd be more than happy to work with both of you. We don't think that we're affecting the areas that you're concerned about. We'd be happy to address that and make sure it's taken care of.
Be sure. All right. So if you'll jot that down, and
Sure.
does that get to what you're concerned with, Reverend Sessions? That's important. Yeah.
And Chairman Sessions.
Reverend Cassis, they get to what you're concerned about. They'll speak with you and get that addressed. Please do. All right. We have a motion. Any more discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Do I hear? All right, it's unanimous. Okay, thank you all so much. It'll move to rules. Next on the agenda, Representative Casas, your subcommittee met and heard. What's your number? Number 20. All right, all right, Representative Casas, what was your committee's report?
Mr. Chairman, the Subcommittee on Academic Achievement and Curriculum considered House Bill 327, which is the Flexibility and Accountability Act, and after discussion, they gave it a do-pass recommendation.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right, members of the committee, you should have House Bill 327. Is that by committee substitute? Or
Mr. Chairman, that's LC 335120S.
very good. Correct. Everyone, it's LC 335120S, House Bill 327.
And you also should have a summary page, yes, sir.
You also have a very nice summary page. Mr. Chairman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Members of the committee and the subcommittee that heard this bill, the QBE Study Commission met for 2 years. And this year is the last recommendations they have for legislation. And they basically had 3 pieces, one with the race to the top and the other from this commission. And one was to clean up the Title 20 legislation that this committee heard last week before last and was passed. And the second piece, and I consider probably the most important piece, is the flexibility bill. And that's the Flexibility and Accountability Bill, as we call it, Act for Student Achievement. And what this bill basically does, if you look at your summary sheet there, and I'll go with this, then we'll give you the details of the bill, but it's very simple. What it basically does is school systems have said to us for years, you know, we work hard, we should be rewarded when we have good achievement and schools do well. And also, we say charter schools are so good because they don't have all these regulations and rules binding them. We say private schools are so good because they don't have all these rules and regulations. And they say, give us some of the same opportunities to do some of the same things with some of the same flexibilities, and we'll show you the achievement also that we can do just as well, if not better. And so what we've done, we met with lots of superintendents. We met with state board. We've met with a lot of different educators, the Department of Education, in developing this. And this year, with House Bill 186 that Representative Nix did years ago, it seems like now, it was 2 years ago, that's probably the most earth-shaking piece of legislation we've ever had to really help students out, the Career and Technical Education Bill. And along with that and a lot of the work that State Board has done, they have developed and are developing a way to evaluate all of our schools. Every single school in the state will be evaluated starting actually next year, the trial run, and they will be taking these averages of these schools and they will be giving the systems a grade. And these systems will be getting a grade from 0 to 100. And what we're basically saying, to make this very simple, is any school that receives a grade, go ahead. Any system that receives a grade of 80 or above, they will be granted complete flexibility. They will be given complete freedom to do what they want. They can choose, as I'll talk to you in a minute, a Category 2 school or a Category 3 school. Schools that fall below an 80, 79 or lower, could choose two areas. They can choose a Category 1 or a Category 3 charter system or a strategic school system. And with each of these levels goes a certain amount of flexibility, and that's what we want to talk to you about at this time. Now, let me quickly just talk to you about these categories, and I'm going to turn it over to Mike to give you the nuts and bolts of this. A Category 1 school, or the strategic school system, if you look at your summary sheet, that's a system that really that drops below the 80 or a failing grade. And what that's any system not categorized or 2 or 3 in general, this will mean that they score in less than an 80, and they will be granted a could be a Category 1 school system, and they will have complete oversight by the State Board of Education. They will be granted flexibility as the State Board determines they need that flexibility in order to get off the failing score or to make improvement, and that will be theirs. A Category 2 school, that's one that scores 80 and above. That says they're doing well. They've done real well in their achievement. Their scores are well. They will just be turned loose. They can choose to be completely turned loose. They can operate their school systems as they please. They will have complete flexibility of, we'll talk about later, the Big Four categories that we give them. The Big Four exemptions are class sizes, expenditure control, certification requirement, and the salary schedule, plus a lot of other flexibility they have. They also could choose to be a charter system that we heard y'all heard us talk about in the Title 20 bill, a charter system, and in that they will receive an implementation grant at this time, and they will also be granted some flexibility. If they so choose, any system from 0 to 100 could actually choose to become a charter system if they're willing to go by the rules of the charter system, which means operating at the local school level and granting, involving their parents and local community in the operation of their school. Now, this basically is where we're going, and I'm going to ask Mike, if he would at this time, to give you the nuts and bolts of what this bill will do. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, it's been my pleasure to work with the chairman on this bill for a good part of a year almost, and I want to reemphasize, we have talked dozens of meetings with probably up to 100 people now and tried our very best to try to bring a bill that prevents the broad consensus education community. You never can get everyone to 100% agree, but this does have a good bit of consensus with a lot of the education groups out there. I think they all like it. They have a little problems with it here and there, but that's how you get good legislation. The chairman did a great job explaining our systems. I do want to make a couple comments around flexibility. If you look down there, when we talk about giving complete flexibility, there are exceptions. They're in the bottom of the summary page. Obviously, we cannot, number one, you can't exempt federal law or grant reporting. Safety-related laws around having bad guys next to the end of your school and all the criminal background. I said checks. This should be checks in my thing here. Unlawful conduct, can't exempt those. Anything to do with student conduct, you can't charge tuition. Just sort of your common sense things. Student enrollment, quiet reflection, and accountability reporting. The things you're exempting is all the rest of Title 20, which tells you how you can run your school. And those include the Big Four, and the Big Four are important to understand because they're going to come up here in a minute. If you look in the middle of your notes, the Big Four that we call for waivers are class size, expenditure control, telling you how exactly to spend your money, certification for teachers, and salary schedule. Now, right now, we are operating, as you well know, under a blanket waiver for many of these things because of the budget crisis. Local school systems are under a blanket class size and expenditure control waiver right now as we speak. That expires in July of 2015 unless we do something. The intent of this bill and the effective date is July 2015, is to have a system that replaces just a sort of blanket waiver with this tiered system. As the chairman said, if you are a 80 or above, you're going to get that flexibility moving forward because you're doing a good job, and we want to let you have local control. If you're below an 80, we recognize still, and this was very important, it came out with many of the superintendents, that if you're a struggling school system trying to do better, that you sometimes need some of this flexibility in order to do better. And so we're going to let the state board grant that, but is with a contract with the state where you're going to have to show what you're going to do, how you're going to use the flexibility, and the state's going to monitor you. And very important, as the chairman said, charter systems, which done here several years ago, we're not changing basically a word of the charter systems code. They're staying exactly as they are. Any system can apply to charter system whenever they want. Same process. It takes about 2 years to go through the required community building and effort to do that, but we're not changing charter system. So you can be a 50-grade school system or a 99-grade school system, and you can apply. A couple big important things is that all the waivers we're granting here are 3 years minimum, and that was important because if you give school system flexibility, they're going to plan for that, they're going to budget for that. You can't be yanking back and forth flexibility every year. It's not practical for the school boards to deal with that. So now I'd like to go through the bill just very briefly, just so we can walk through the sections.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
anytime you have any
Yeah.
questions, we'll be glad to.
So the first part is just wording. The first major part is
Representative Dudgeon, just
Yes,
for a moment. What
sure.
I'll do is, members of the committee, as we
Yeah.
did in the subcommittee,
Yeah.
there's quite a few sections here.
Yeah.
And so as the questions come up, please go ahead and press your button, and we'll take questions for each section.
All right, so the first section is just the definitions, lines 30 through 50. Nothing very, just what we said there. Basically, Category 2, high achieving, you have to make it 80 or greater as a system, and also 90% of your schools have to be greater than 80 as well. Category 3 is just charter system, no different than it is today. And we're measuring these schools, as the chairman said, by the CCRPI, the really good index the state board and the department have been working on for, gosh, 2 years now, that replaced the No Child Left Behind system. It's got 19 different metrics for high school, including graduation rate, multiple test scores, preparedness for college. It's a very good index. And by the way, let me tell you right now, and the department will tell you this too, this scorecard is a tough scorecard. It may come out to be one of the toughest scorecards in the nation. We're not going to be giving out a whole ton of A's and B's to our school system. This is a tough, real score system. If you get a good grade on this, you have earned it. And I think I can speak for the chairman and many members here. We want it to be that way. We want high expectations. We don't want to be giving away flexibility for a false scorecard that doesn't really matter. And the schools want that. Yeah.
Okay, we have one question.
Yes.
Representative Dixon.
Yes, on over on line 30, 35, 36, where
Yes.
you set the rating of greater than or equal to 80, but then you have the language, however, it can be, that threshold can be increased by the state board. Why don't we start off with just some consistency instead of something that's going to possibly change midstream?
Yeah, you want-
As they're in the process of developing this grading system now, they may have to do some tweaking somewhere. And there had been, and we're against this, I want to say, there had been a statement that the Office of Student Achievement may want to change that to grades of A, B, and we're saying we want to stay with the grades 1 through 100. That's what we're looking at. But that's what it just means. In case it changes, we want that 80 and above, that level, to be passing.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that was a defensive move on our part. If the scorecard came out and everyone was 90s and 80s,
Yeah.
then we need to increase that. But I have confidence that the department's coming out with a very good scorecard, and so I don't know if that language is really that necessary, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
in the event that it needs changing,
we can do legislatively.
why would we not want to do it if we're setting the program up?
So you're saying just,
Yeah, I would,
I have no
Mr.
problem.
Chairman.
I have no problem with it. Just take
We
it
may-
out.
So,
Is that what you're thinking?
you want?
You know, I like the way you think sometimes.
I know you do. I'm reading your mind.
Representative Dixon, if you want to prepare that amendment,
Yeah,
Just hold that.
hold that. All right.
proceed.
Moving on.
Yep.
All right, bottom of 52 talks about how we're going to score the systems. The first rankings are going to be the average of the 2012-13, 2013-14 school systems, and you'll find this later, or the most recent score on the top of line 59, page 3. Or once we get rolling with this, it's going to be 3-year running average of the most recent score. The idea is, again, is we want to reward achievement as much as possible. So if you have a school system who busts their butt, pulls their score up to a good score, we want to reward them and not have to wait through a 3-year average period. So that was how we're doing the rating assignment.
And plus, you
yeah,
mentioned the progress.
for progress, absolutely. On line 65, we say anytime, make it very clear for our friends in the Senate that anytime you can pursue a charter system, doesn't matter. There's nothing in here which prevents you from doing that. Line 68 through 84 get into the weeds legally, but this is trying to deal with the IE squared contracts. We have 3 systems who have IE squared contracts which are currently ongoing. This actual bill actually, the first line repeals the old IE squared law and replaces it with this. So what do you do with these IE squared systems? We're basically saying in order so there's not a gap in coverage, we say the state board can extend their contracts into the end of this term, and then we will set their consequences at the end of the term instead of in the middle. It's just basically a way to bridge the IE squared systems that operate under IE squared until this bill kicks in 2015. There's 3 systems there, and they're all.
Right now we have 3 systems IE squared. We have 13 systems that are charter systems, with 3 more that are coming on this year. And as you heard them say the other day when we did the Title 20 bill, 16 in the pike to looking at IE squared, so you know what's happening out there.
Alrighty, so the next section, starting on line 85, is saying what a charter Category 1 or strategic school system can do as far as a waiver, and it talks about how you can have a strategic plan, have to file it with the board, and articulate how you can use this flexibility. Basically, you have to go through a hoops and review process from the state board because you're not on your own because you're not making an 80. It also says that they can get the Big 4 down at lines 122. That it puts an even higher standard of achievement on the state board granting that Big 4. It was quite just to be clear, when we met about this for the several months, there was quite a bit of bouncing around about whether a Category 1 system should get a Big 4 waiver. And again, the feedback very strongly from some of our superintendents was there are some systems who are working with a student population which is more challenging demographically, free and reduced lunch and so forth, and if they are really busting their butts and needing this kind of flexibility, there should be a channel for the state board to give that to them. And they pointed out that the Big 4, like class size and expenditure, are important ones in order to be able to move the needle on student achievement. So we put that in there in a good faith
and still be
opinion.
a lot of oversight by the state board.
That's right.
It wouldn't be in those with complete flexibility.
That's exactly right. All right. So line 136 just says Category 2 gets the flexibility automatically. And again, without any paperwork or bureaucracy. Lines 144 lists the things I talked about, which are exempt from the flexibility. It also includes, we added in line 162, the teacher evaluation system that Representative Nix is carrying is not waivable. That's going to be a statewide thing, and we feel important that it stays that way. Basically, top 165 still says you still have to report back to student achievement what your status is, and so that we can be able to monitor whether you really are a Category 1, 2, or 3 system. Again, 171 says you can still make a charter school at any time, so we're not restricting in any way making a charter school a charter system.
Now let's be sure you understand, we got charter systems. There can be a charter school created within a charter system. You know, we talked about that the other day. We spent a lot of time talking about what a charter school was, a startup, conversion. So that does not prevent a group of parents petitioning a charter system for a charter school, right? Right, Representative Kaiser?
178 is a wish list, came out of the commission. The idea of if we had some money, having a little bit of grants, maybe one of the foundations can pick up with this. For innovative practices or to do mentoring, because there's one point I think is legitimate, is that if you have a bunch of Category 1 systems which need help, there's only so many people at state board, only so much you can do remotely. But what if you had a county, 2 counties next to each other, one was an 88 county doing well and one was a 71, and they had similar demographics? Could we not somehow incentivize if we had the right grant program? Again, this is a wish list item.
And one thing you remember, Representative Dixon, I think the first bill that you passed, one of the bills was creating that investment, you know, allowing the state board to manage some of this grant money. There's one there, and you remember in the Title 20, also the last section is the Office of Student Achievement, the race to the top. $19 million could also be used for grants. So we've got those programs that could apply for these grants.
We do have a question, Representative Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a concern of school districts. I think this flexibility is fantastic. I've said before, I believe we ought to give max flexibility to school districts, provide meaningful school choice, and let them go deliver a service to students. My concern, though, in 177 through 85, or perhaps elsewhere in the bill, do we have a circumstance in the state where school districts can, on their own, go get what constraints do school districts have on getting federal grants that the State Department, State Board, and State Legislature has no purview over?
Well, I can say is a lot of your larger systems, I know a lot of systems I know have grant writers that constantly go after grants. And matter of fact, the last 3 weekends I've done auctions for school foundations. Some of them raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for grants, giving these local schools grants. So no, they've established these foundations within their schools, and they do apply for grants. No, there are no strings to that.
I raise that concern as we're lifting strings off of systems, which I think is a great idea. I appreciate. I'm glad that we're doing it. I'm concerned that through the process of school systems getting grants from the federal government, those have strings themselves that aren't tied to anything that's under the purview of the State Board, General Assembly. So although we're giving systems flexibility, systems are binding themselves through federal requirements through grant process.
As far as I'm concerned, that is complete flexibility on that system's part. They know what they're going for. They know what they're applying for. I would stay away from those that would tie my, they would be careful what you apply for.
And again, my concern, Mr. Chairman,
I don't want to restrict them what they can go for.
My concern, though, is that generally, we can debate whether it's a 50-50 funding proposition. Many systems get more than 50% of their funding from the state. So in essence, whether they get 40% from the state and 60% locally, or whether they get 70% from the state if they're a poor system, and we're giving them flexibility. I've just got concerns of the growing ambition in both parties, candidly. It's not a partisan issue, but of federal education regulators and how systems might bind themselves to that in an educational delivery system where 60% of the money, 50% of the money is coming from this General Assembly.
Good point, but I agree. I think that's, again,
so there's no constraints that we're putting on them here.
I don't think we should. That's flexibility. I don't think we should. Again, that's the state putting restriction on what they can do.
But again, just for the record, half the money the systems are getting to educate their kids are coming from us, and in essence, we are lifting the requirements, and that's just something we need to consider as a committee.
Well, we did have the general waiver there that we're not exempting any federal law grant reporting. That's called out in the bill. In other words, we can't. I mean, we might like to. I think you probably like to, but we can't. So, and just as a comment, when I was on the school board, we turned down a federal grant program for the exact reason you mentioned, because the strings attached weren't worth it. Do you know what I'm saying? So I understand where you're going from.
One more question.
I hope they would apply for our local grants, not state grants we don't have. Wouldn't that fine?
Representative Dixon.
Would you not say, though, that while we're granting flexibility to local systems in here, that's flexibility on how they achieve goals, but not on what the goals are?
Exactly right. Good point. Good point.
So no matter how they bind themselves with some other grant that they get, they still have the goals.
Yes. We're telling them, they're being told what, but the how they can do. Yes, sir.
Okay, next section.
All right. Next section, line 185, 187 rather, points out that this is still a little bit of work in progress, and that the commission wanted the department to come up with some additional recommendations for the end of the year. I know the governor's office also is looking at additional failing school type things. They may be looking at that as well. So just a general statement there. 193 is an interesting thing. We got a lot of feedback, the chairman especially and I both, that with some of the existing waiver process we have, that some of our systems felt that the state board or the DOE at times was not 100% honoring the waiver that they felt they should have got. And so we're designating a couple kind of ombudsman type positions, some mediators, one from the governor's office and one from the state board, that will work together, and their job is to help mediate any disputes where these flexibility is supposed to be granted but it's not actually being given, and then they're going to report back to us. This was an important thing, and I felt that we felt if we give them the flexibility, then, and the State Department's heard us beat on them, so this is no news, that they need to make sure to leave these people truly alone. Yep. The rest of the bill is really just terminology, where the word flexibility was done before. It's now category 1, 2, or 3 school system. talking about the new about the waivers. You can't waive the annual performance evaluation, which is on line 247. Talks about the provisions of code section doesn't apply to charter schools or the flexibility. This is just the legal language necessary to make the new flexibility system fit in the rest of the code. Line 351, I know we've talked about, the chairman's talked about at length around names for charter system. It's a very confusing name. We're going to call it Category 3, but also call it charter system, so we'll see what happens. And, yeah, so that's line 351. You watch that doesn't get stricken out. And then same thing on 392, talking about that everybody's subject to the annual performance evaluations. And that is the bill.
Fantastic presentation. Any further questions from members of the committee? Representative Kaiser.
I don't have a question, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to ask that at the appropriate time I'd be recognized for a motion.
You will be recognized.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Very well. Representative Dixon, your amendment.
The amendment would be to strike, beginning on line 35, after the word 80, down through just prior to, on line 36, the word and.
Yes.
And similarly on lines 39 and 40, again after the word 80, down through to the right before the word or.
Yes, sir.
And those were the only two places I could find that reference. So.
That's it.
Very good. The amendment has been made. Is there a second? Second. Very well. Second has been made. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, we do not object.
Very good. All in favor of the Dixon amendment, once again, is to strike the language on line 35 and 36 after 80 all the way to and on line 39, 40 to strike after 80 up to or. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Very well. And now, Ms. Kaiser, if you will make your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move House Bill 327 be adopted as amended.
And there is a second. Any further discussion? Very well. All in favor of giving a due pass recommendation to House Bill 327 as amended, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. All right. We're now going to hear the concussion bill. This time we'll be hearing House Bill 284, and that was in the subcommittee. Representative Clark, that was in your subcommittee. Your number is 27. All right, let me get you on. There you are.
That was the Subcommittee for Academic Innovations, and it was recommended unanimously do pass.
All right, and before we start, I would like to ask Representative Kaiser, because she was asked to co-chair a study committee this summer, and they spent a lot of time working on this. So what's your number, Representative Kaiser? I'd like for you to make some comments about your study commission and what y'all did.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Speaker convened a study, or asked for us to convene a study committee on the return to play. I know Representative Pruitt has done a lot of work on this. Senator Lindsey Tippins and I chaired a study committee, and typically with study committees, they tend to last over several months, more than one meeting. But the meeting that we had was attended by so many incredible groups of people: the CDC, Emory, Georgia Concussion Coalition, National Football League. I mean, there's so much information out there about head trauma. So what we did is we just really took this wealth of information and started to look at perfecting a bill that would sort of hold harmless people who are coaching these young kids, to try to have a scenario where we're educating our coaches to recognize the signs of head trauma. And so kids, when they experience, whether they're trying out for a sport or actively participating in a sport, if they have a head injury, for the coaches to be able to recognize the signs of a concussion and not put those kids back into play. So really simply, what we're trying to do with this bill is just have some concussion, some education around the symptoms of a concussion, have some immediate removal of the youth from play, clearance by a healthcare provider, and what was our fourth one? And really, I'm going to steal your thunder, Jimmy, because this is really the beef of the bill, which is just to have a statewide medically sound legislative requirement that ensures all of Georgia's youth, parents, and coaches have the same access to information regardless of where they live and what sport they are involved. It also relieves communities and schools of the administrative burden of locating and or developing the appropriate materials. So I was proud to have worked on this and looking forward to Representative Pruitt's presentation.
Great job. Appreciate that. You have in your packet, and I want to commend our staff for what a great job they do, because I know we were confused early on, but we got them. But they have the original bill, which is LC 5084S, and we're working today from LC 335098S. That's the substitute. Is that correct? Representative Pruitt, is that what you're working on?
That is it. Thank you.
Okay, I want to be sure we're right. So with this time, if you have anyone with you that's going to be presenting with you?
No, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
So let's turn it over to you. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee, and thank you, Representative Kaiser. And Mr. Speaker, I'm open for a vote right now if you want. I mean,
hey, I'm ready, baby. I think she's done a good job.
I think she
ready.
did too.
I do.
You know, I don't have much to add other than to tell you that we had a very exciting meeting, I think, in subcommittee, and I think the chairman of the subcommittee, she did a great job. And but this is a bipartisan bill, and it's a bill about bringing some clarification to problems that we've had, you know, with particularly with children and concussions, which has been out there for a long time, and we're one of now. There's been 44 states that already have passed this type of legislation, and there's over 12,000 children a year that's injured in head injuries outside of automobile accidents, and so. This is a really important piece of legislation, and like I said, it is non-party, and the study committee did a great job, and I commend them this summer. And we've got endorsements from the NFL, from the Children's Health Care, and from Georgia High School Athletic Association. And basically all we're asking is that we're putting in place an opportunity for school systems, school boards to implement a return to play policy, basically, and saying to them, here's what the policy needs to be. We're not mandating anything that's going to cost them money, and we're just saying simply that we want you to educate the parents and the athletes and the coaches to the risk of concussions. We want you to be able to recognize through training what a concussion symptom looks like, and in the event that a player has those symptoms, then they would have to see a medical provider in order to return to play under their program, how that play out under whatever the physician or the medical care would say had to be done in order for them to complete evaluation before they could come back to play. The training and things like that will be offered at no cost. And then the second part of it is recreation departments was a big concern. And we're not mandating that the rec department do anything other than make available information to all the parents and to the coaches and to the children that are playing, letting them know that there are situations where concussions can happen and how they recognize that. But we are heavily asking them and encouraging them to come up with their own plan, with this being the minimum standard. Mr. Chairman, this was well vetted in, like I said, in subcommittee, and I'll be glad to take any questions or go through it department by department or section by section if it need be.
Any questions from the committee members? Now is your time to ask any question. You've seen the bill. All right. Representative, let's see, is that Representative Benton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Pruitt, I appreciate the bill. I have a concern that a tremendous amount is being put on local boards of educations and your youth athletic programs, and I guess that the concern that I have is parental involvement. They don't have to take the forms, those types of things. And I've just looked through the bill real quickly. Is there anything that absolves the sporting leagues and stuff from liability?
That's a very good question. I thank you for asking that, and I apologize for not covering that. But we went to in-depth questioning and by the Trial Lawyers Association and everybody else to ensure that there is no liability here for anyone other than the doctor under his normal or physician under his normal care that he normally would be. But as far as coaches, the school system, or the parents, or anybody else, they're not actually, cannot be held liable, and all that language has been cleared up. Matter of fact, that was a little bit of what we tweaked in subcommittee to get everybody on board.
All right. Any other questions? Any other questions? All right. 18.
Mr. Chairman, I hate that I've asked a question on every bill so far
Well,
today.
it shows you're reading the bills.
I to my friend and seatmate, what is in your opinion, what's the difference between the passage of this bill and passage of a resolution that's transmitted to all the appropriate entities from the General Assembly, directing or urging them to do this?
I'm sorry, did I interrupt? I'm sorry.
Please.
This actually does have some mandates. If you look at under paragraph B, section 1, 2, and 3, these are mandates that have to be done by the school systems. But these are minimums that have to be done. These are not recommendations. But these mandates do nothing to create a cost to the school system. But this says you will do these things and as a minimum, rather than like a resolution would just encourage.
And I just asked the question, and my concern is and it bites all of us at one time as legislators. You see something that you want to fix. Some things require legislative action. Some things require leadership action.
I agree.
There are things in my district I've not sponsored bills for. I've just kind of used the bully pulpit we have as representatives to try to make a leadership move, to try to encourage something and lead it to happen. I applaud you for the leadership action involved here, and I think the state ought to certainly play a leadership role. I don't know that we need to play a statutory role. And I say that with having two boys who are of football age. This is a real concern of mine. I'm just, I applaud you. I applaud the leadership. I'm wrestling with whether this ought to be a statutory action or leadership action.
Well, thank you for the question, and I'm not going to argue that point with you today, but it is a very good point. But again, if you go back and look at those three things, I think you'll find that our biggest reason for this is to say we need to do something because it's widespread. We haven't done enough, and if we leave it up to each school system to do it, they may or may not do it, but we're actually saying you will do it, but we will not put any unfunded mandates on you. However, you can draw up your own program. This is just saying you will have a program, and I think that something that we can do like that wouldn't bring any expense to them would encourage them to at least get out there and educate. And one of the things is that I'm most concerned about is that between the ages of 7 and 19, when kids incur these injuries, their brains repair slower than adults. And reoccurring injuries is where the real damage is done, and it's hard to detect that. And I'm hoping that in the future there'll be some things out there that can detect concussions immediately on the field, which I don't know are available at the current time. But I just think as a minimum that these things that we've put together mandating that at least you have a program are certainly pertinent and something that needs to be done at the current time. But I do understand your resolution issue. We do have some school boards that are currently already doing this, but everybody's doing it in a different way, and that's why we wanted to leave the flexibility to the locals to design their own plan rather than us mandate.
All right, 24.
Mr. Chairman, I also just wanted to add to what Representative Pruitt said. I think one of the things, Representative, in study committee that came out is that I didn't know this, but there's a central registry of traumatic brain and spinal injuries, including concussions, that's legislatively assigned to the Brain and Injury Trust Commission. So in talking about whether we want a resolution or in subcommittee, I think for both Senator Tippins and I, the Georgia Concussion Coalition, they've done so much work, it's disseminating that. That's been a problem. And I think it was, without question, very clear to us that they wanted this codified. They didn't want a resolution. They really felt like it needed to be law, if that helps.
Okay. All right, you said you had I have no more questions, so said you wanted to make a motion?
Yes, sir. I'd like to make a motion that House Bill 284 do pass.
All right, I have a motion that 284 do pass. Do I have a second? I have a second. Any more discussion? All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. No. All right, let's take, how many against it where I can just record your votes? We have one no, okay? All right. At this time, thank you so much. Your bill is moving over to rules, so
Thank you,
go
Mr.
get
Chairman.
it.
Thank you,
We have
Committee.
3 bills to go. They should go very quickly, I think. That was a famous last word as we stayed till 5:30. So at this time, I'm going to take the lady first because she is just a wonderful lady, and the gentleman will be so glad. So would Representative Sims please come forward and give us your bill. All right. Where's Barry? Representative Fleming, where are you? I know you. I said, okay, you're here. Sir? The beautiful lady. I'm just glad she's here. I heard you. Okay. All right.
Thank
Barbara,
you.
Representative Sims, her bill was in what subcommittee? All right. Representative Casas, what was your recommendation?
Mr. Chairman, our subcommittee heard House Resolution 218, and it gave it a do pass recommendation.
All right. That's House Resolution 218 in your folder. All right. Representative Sims?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm bringing you House Resolution 218 in the hopes that our superintendents will see fit to encourage the teachers to teach our Constitution. Already this is in our school curriculum, but I've had constituents to say that their children are not receiving that instruction. So I'm asking if we can maybe just sort of back up and ask the superintendents to encourage the teachers, or maybe we need to encourage the superintendents to have the teachers expose our children to the Constitution. It's simply a matter of letting them have the opportunity to expand their knowledge. I'm asking for a favorable vote.
You know, Representative Sims, I mentioned to you, did you have a chance to talk to the State Department? Are they here today?
I do not think they're here. Oh, yes.
Can you comment on
Thank you.
the question I asked about where this is being taught?
Where it's being taught?
Yeah.
We currently teach it in all schools and that.
What I'm wanting, and I'd like to have this before the bill goes to the floor, I'd like to know what subjects, where it is being taught, if it's meant, where it's in the curriculum, because I think that's important to know.
No, I did not ever have a chance.
They never got in touch with her?
Yes, she has not been well.
Tell her that's not very nice. We've tried our best to get in touch with them. Have that for me tomorrow. I'd certainly appreciate it, then, because that's okay. Anything else you want to say?
That's all.
All right.
Thank you.
Any questions? All right. Do I have a motion? I have 20.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for a do pass on House Resolution 218.
All right. I have a do pass. Do I have a second? Have a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you
moving the
very
rules.
much.
And if you would, that information should be to us tomorrow. Let's you and I
Very
get
good.
together. I know they'll have it to us by 9 o'clock.
I'm
so
sure they will.
You and I will get together and go over that on the House floor. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank you so much. All right. Representative Ben, you're going to be here with me just a second. Can I go ahead? All right, Representative Fleming, if you would. All right. That came out of Valerie Clark's subcommittee. Oh, I'm sorry. It came out of, I'm sorry so much, Representative Dudgeons. It came out of your subcommittee, all right? What was your recommendation?
Mr. Chairman, the Academic Support Subcommittee of Education gives a do pass recommendation to House Bill 337.
Does everybody have that in your folder? All right. We'll be speaking from, I have mine, just got everything messed up. Can you give us what we'll be speaking from?
LC 33-5003, is that right, Representative?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right. Representative Fleming?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to bring House Bill 337 to you today. Mr. Chairman, this legislature did some good work a couple of years back when we made it more accessible for kids with life-threatening allergies to have in schools these EpiPens, these delivering shots for epinephrine to save a life when a kid goes into anaphylactic shock. This bill just takes that a little bit further by basically saying that in Georgia, a doctor can prescribe one or several of these to a school rather than having to prescribe it to an individual. So that school can have some on hand just in case the kid goes into shock from a food allergy or bee sting or something like that. The language in the bill is may, not shall. It just gives an opportunity for a school to use this. The delight does not require it. That's basically what the bill does, Mr. Chairman. I know we had a long discussion in subcommittee, and I'd be happy to answer any further questions.
Could you speak to the cost a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Myland, which is the company that distributes these EpiPens, has a program nationally where they are working with school systems to give these free.
Give them free.
That's correct. And any school can sign up with them to get some of these EpiPens to have on stock in case they do have a kid that goes into shock from a food
And I see you holding 2 of them. They recommend at least 2 in case there's a malfunction, right?
They do. They're like every other piece of machinery. Something can go wrong, so it's good to have 2 of them.
Good, okay.
And I would suspect the school would have several more on hand.
Right,
if need
right.
be.
Okay, and be no call. All right, any questions? I have 24.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question, but I said to Representative Fleming, I wanted to make sure what your point that you made was brought up in full committee, because if I'm the mother of teenage boys, and you can just imagine kids going to school and leaving it on the bus or forgetting it, or and so I'm glad that you had an expert in subcommittee talk to the fact that they that there's a dual pack, but kids would bring one to school and oftentimes probably not have one, or it doesn't work, or leave it on the bus. So I'm glad you brought that
Very good point. 27, Representative Clark.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to make a motion.
All right, let me see if this, 20, do you have a comment? Representative Casas?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Representative Fleming, I remember the debates on the very first bill on this, and I just want to make sure again, my concern has always been when a teacher does, or any school official does administer this EpiPen in an emergency, is there protection from liability?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. If you look on line 48 of the bill, that language tracks exactly the same wording that the legislature passed when they passed the previous bill, so that any person that uses it or chooses not to use it for whatever reason is not held liable.
Very good.
That's important.
Excellent.
Yes,
Excellent.
sir.
Okay, any other questions? All right, Representative Clark, you will be recognized for a motion.
I recommend do pass.
We have a recommendation do pass. Do I hear a second? All in favor indicate by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. All right, ladies and gentlemen, on last bill, and we're making good progress. Our one and only, our own. Thank you so much. The bill is in rules now. It'll go there, be there in the morning. Representative Benton, would you like to be there, or would you like to come up here? All right, you're number 1, right? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members.
What committee did that come out of? Now, that came out of Representative Benton.
Representative Casas.
Representative Casas, all right. And that is House Bill number, let me get it here.
245.
240. All right, Representative Casas.
Mr. Chairman, the subcommittee heard House Bill 245 and gave it a do pass recommendation.
Okay. All right. Representative Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 245. To give a little background on why the reason for the bill, several years ago we passed legislation that said that we would no longer pay for leadership certificates and certification unless the person was actually in leadership. And so what has happened is that the Professional Standards Commission has taken that one step further and has said that unless you are sponsored by a school, that you cannot be enrolled in the leadership program in any college in the state of Georgia. And I think that is overstepping. I think that if a person wants to spend their own money to go to school to get a leadership certificate, whether they have a leadership job or even if they even want to become a principal or assistant principal, that shouldn't be up to us or anybody else to tell them that they've got to have a school sponsor them or permission to take that course. And so that is the reason for the bill. And the last 4 lines, it just says that nothing can be done to construe or prohibit any educator from enrolling in a leadership preparation program. So that's the bill, Mr. Chairman.
I want to ask just for information, have you had a chance to talk with the head of the PSC about this? What was his comment? What was his comment?
I did call Mr. Henson when I heard about the problem and asked him point blank, was that one of their regulations? And he said yes.
Okay.
And I asked him, I said, well, would y'all look at changing that where people can go back and they're not necessarily wanting pay, they just want to find out about how leadership works in schools and that type of thing. And he was unwavering in his in saying that they would not take that requirement off, and I think that's overstepping their bounds.
You know, I'm completely supportive of not paying for a degree if it's not in the area where you are teaching. For instance, if you have a leadership degree and you're a fifth grade teacher, not if you're whatever. But if you want to do it on your own, and I talked with the same person, you know, that called me also. I mean, that's their right. And these people are talking about moving to Alabama, you remember, and if they had a degree, there's a possibility they get a job there. So, any questions? Number 25. Yes, sir.
I'm just ready to make a motion whenever you're
I'll
ready.
entertain your motion. I have no other question.
I make a motion we do pass.
I have a motion to pass. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. All right. We're getting ready to adjourn. Remember, you vice chairs, chairman. I have my 3 chairmen here. Remind your vice chair to collect dues. We've gotten them for about a third of the people, and we're gonna so let me know, and we'll be. Our next meeting will be next Tuesday. It's important. Now listen very carefully. Next Tuesday is going to be a very important meeting. You know, the 30th day, as we think, will probably be what, Thursday. So we may have a call meeting. Let me say this: we may have a call meeting this week. Want everybody to be ready. Maybe tomorrow, or could be Thursday, or even Friday, to try to get something out. We'll get en route if we need to. So we still have several bills in subcommittee. David, give us any new bills you have that need to be assigned that you know of. All right. What we'll do is we'll get with Courtney, and whatever we have, we'll get the bills to you, and to you chairpersons, where you go ahead and have subcommittee meetings if you want to. It's my intent to give all of these people a hearing, even though it may be after the 30th day. We still have, it's a 2-year session, so we may can still move them later. It's okay. Any question? Thank you. What's that? Do I have a question? What? Okay. Dismissed. Thank you.